Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with something that is incredibly special and incredibly exciting. We have ourselves a Crystal Palace model. This model is actually created by Antediluvian Miniatures, and they have so many super cool models on their site, and I only recently discovered them and was so blown away by the fact that they not only had Crystal Palace models, but others sort of like old school, vintage style dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures and stuff. So I was instantly completely enthralled with their products, and again, now finally having some here to check out with you guys, I'm really hyped about their work because they do fantastic work overall. And as we can see, we've got ourselves the Crystal Palace Megalosaurus. Now this, of course, would come unpainted and unbuilt. There are a few different pieces. Basically, just the legs, really, is all you need to add on to the model, which is nice because, again, it doesn't cause you to be delayed, building a lot and everything. Like, it's only the 4 legs, and then you're good to go. And, of course, you have to seal the seams and all of that fun stuff. But another good thing about this model is the body itself is made of, like, resin, but the legs have, like, a metallic material that he used, kind of like a die-cast metal, it seemed like, something along those lines. So the figure does have some weight to it, which is definitely nice. Again, even though it's fairly small, it's really sturdy, which is a huge plus. So I'm going to go ahead and readjust the camera here, just so I can make it a little easier for me to take a look at it. Now, of course, my camera is going to hate this because I painted it with, like, greenish tones and stuff, because I tried my best to sort of replicate the look of the actual version of this, again from the Crystal Palace, because it is colored in like a greenish color, but I tried to give it the dirty, sort of dusty look like you would expect it to have, kind of sitting there in that, wooded area, but at the same time also sort of add some elements of realism to it. But for the most part, I tried to just capture, again, like the model itself, the statue itself, in sort of like a, again, very weathered kind of state. And I'm pretty happy with the paint job that I gave it. I don't know if I absolutely matched the colors perfectly, but I tried to give it quite a few different greens and stuff, because again, when you look through the images on Google to try to get the exact tones of color down, there's so much variation to this, and I'm sure it's, because there are images throughout the years, and maybe it's been repainted and stuff, and like the tones of color are slightly different from image to image, so I just basically went with a mixture of different shades of greens that are fairly similar to what we see in the images. But again, starting here in the head sculpt, you can see that head sculpt is pretty darn spot on to what you would see on the Crystal Palace Megalosaurus. They definitely captured the overall look and feel of the head of the Megalosaurus. We can see the teeth sculpted out there on the inside of the mouth. The eye as well is sculpted nicely, and I painted it and gave it, again, a bit of a gloss coat just to add a little bit of realism to it. You can see the texturing and everything looks absolutely like it does on the actual statue itself. So they've captured the overall, sculpting style of the Crystal Palace Megalosaurus very nicely with this version. We can see the nostrils sculpted out as well, and as you move through the course of the model, my camera, there we go, decides to focus, you will notice again all of the different variations of greens that I've given it, as well as some brownish tones kind of like creeping throughout all of the cracks and crevices of the skin texture, in my attempt to kind of give this that sort of dirty, dusty look, like it's been sitting out in the woods for a while, which is exactly what you would, again, want to see for the Crystal Palace statues, I think. But as you move up, you have those very large, that kind of like hump there on the back of the model right there, again, just like you do see on the Crystal Palace Megalosaurus. Moving down, we've got all the muscle definition and everything very nicely sculpted out as you lead through. You could see the elbow and the wrist and everything, the toes as well, again, sculpted very nicely with those scoots down the toes, and then of course the claws here on the front leg, I guess you could say, of this version. Again, if you are unfamiliar with the Crystal Palace models, I highly recommend you checking that out. Like, if there was one place I could pick to visit in my lifetime, I would have the hardest time in the world not saying it would be the Crystal Palace. I would just love to be able to one time go there just to see these models in person, because again, I've been seeing them since I was a young child, so it's just so iconic to me and so special, and I've never unfortunately had the pleasure of being there to check them out in person, but I bet they are an absolute breathtaking treat if you do get to go. But as you move through the rest of the model, again, you can see all of the kind of cracks and crevices to the skin texture here in the stomach leading up and into the back of our Megalosaurus. As you lead back, you can see the spinal column there protruding through the skin. You've got some more muscle definition leading down along the thigh, and then of course a little bit of a bulging calf muscle. We can also see the kneecap right there, and again the same sort of look for the feet and the toes. We can see the skin sort of stretching off of the stomach right there, and as you lead back here, we can see the tail of course comes out and curves again toward the dinosaur's right hand side, and we have that same style of texturing and everything to the skin with all of the cracks and crevices, again exactly as it is sculpted out in the Crystal Palace, with that very primitive sort of looking sculpting style, which I just absolutely adore. And as we move back up here, obviously you can see the rear leg is sort of planted down as well. Again, you've got the toes and everything and the nails sculpted very nicely. And as you lead back, or actually I should say lead forward, you can see how this leg is kind of lifting up off of the ground, just about to sort of take a step as they added a little bit of extra life to the Megalosaurus, which is super cool. And then of course we lead back up here to the head sculpt. And even the underside again has some very nice detailing to it. But as a whole, that is an absolutely awesome version of the Crystal Palace Megalosaurus, and I'm super excited to have a model of this. But as you can see when I was holding it there, it is a fairly small version of the Megalosaurus. So for a length, you are looking at about 5¼ inches or around 13 centimeters, and then for a height to the back there, you're looking at just a hair under 2 inches or around 5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Megalosaurus, just giving you an idea of the size and the fact that, again, when it comes to this model, it is fairly small, but that could be a very good thing if you don't have a whole lot of room in your collection. It allows you to have a Crystal Palace model in your collection without taking up a whole lot of room, so I guess that could definitely be viewed as a great thing at the same time. But you can see, again, overall, it is fairly small in the grand scheme of things. Now, one unfortunate downside is I have absolutely no other Crystal Palace models in my collection at this point, so I have no other Crystal Palace models to compare with this. So we'll just do a few randoms. Here we have the Safari LTDU Tyrannus, which you can see is a little bit bigger. And then, of course, continuing on with my usual random comparison review suspects, we've got the Collect A Deluxe Dimetrodon, which is obviously a bit larger, as well as the Schleich Diabloceratops, which looks like it is severely offended by this Megalosaurus and is about to bite him right on the snout. We've also got a standard Mattel Velociraptor, which we can see is, of course, a bit larger. And then maybe the coolest comparison I can give you guys, we have the PNSO version of the Megalosaurus. So we have like that super old school interpretation on the right hand side, and maybe one of the most, if not the most up-to-date versions of a Megalosaurus here on the left. And that right there is such an incredible visual, just showing you how this species has changed over the years, drastically changed from, you know, when we first discovered it compared to what we obviously believe it looked like now. So very cool to see these two together, and honestly these two would be a great companion piece to display together. So this Antediluvian Megalosaurus, the Crystal Palace Megalosaurus, is absolutely gorgeous. I cannot recommend enough that you guys go check out their website, because they have some absolutely incredible models on there, some of which that I do not have in my possession yet, but I am hoping to get my hands on and of course review for you guys eventually. But this is probably one of the standouts overall, I would say, because again, what in dinosaur world, I guess you could say, is more iconic than the Crystal Palace models? And when it comes to those Crystal Palace models, I would think the most iconic overall would be the Megalosaurus. Like, whenever it comes to any sort of image of the Crystal Palace, I feel like the Megalosaurus is like, you know, the guy. He's like the mascot for the Crystal Palace. I think it's probably the most iconic dinosaur in the Crystal Palace overall. So having an actual very highly detailed model of that dinosaur is extremely exciting, and I feel like they absolutely knocked this out of the park. When it comes to the overall appearance, they've captured everything and anything that you would want to see on a Crystal Palace Megalosaurus, from the overall pose, the stance that it has, as well as the way that this is sculpted out to replicate the sculpting style of the Megalosaurus. I feel like they hit the nail on the head perfectly in every area. So absolutely fantastic work on their part, and of course, the fact that it is a little bit on the smaller side is definitely a plus for anybody, again, like I said, that might have an overflowing collection but would really love to have a Crystal Palace model. I feel like this is definitely a great one to go with. As I already mentioned, I painted this one myself, so, the colors on yours could be different from what I've done to mine. It's really up to you and how you want yours to look, but I'm pretty happy with the way mine turned out, even if it's not perfect as far as the tones of color. It's hard to get a really perfect sense of what the tones of color would be. But again, in the comments section, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and if you would like to grab one of these and add it to your collection, I will include a link in the description to where you can head on over and check out their website, see all of the incredible models that they have available, because again, this is only the tip of the iceberg, and grab some and add them to your collection, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.